I am Jean-Claude Carreau. I'm French, living in Luxembourg, and the founder of this foundation called Land of Friendship and Peace. The idea came to me about 14 years ago to try to help war victims and especially orphans. We have horses in the foundation. Horses, the primary purpose of which was to create in Bosnia hippotherapy, that is therapy using horses for children with behavioral or motor problems.
Uspjeh je najveća želja da ovako s njima kontaktiram.
Pa evo, što se tiče hipoterapije i dolaska djece tu u Kakrinje na hipoterapiju, djeca cijelu godinu čekaju ovaj događaj. Znači, cijelu godinu mi radimo s njima dole u Los Rosales i oni pričaju o ovome kad će doći kad će doći na Kakrinje i kad će javiti.
We gradually built a number of buildings to accommodate what we have now done for the camp directed by Nigel Osborne.
The idea of these camps is to be complementary to work through the year, and that means the work of the staff, and it means the work of the music therapy department in the Pavarotti Center.
Ti možeš improvizovati na neki drugi način. Bitno je da vidiš postupke, načine kako se radi i bez obzira što nisi muzički obrazovan, možeš to prilagoditi na neki drugi način zainteresovati djecu.
So the emphasis in these days is on the children having a holiday, having some fun in a nice place, and also having lots of attention and making lots of friends. Many of our children here are orphans, bringing a large group of volunteers who are able to take a personal interest in the children, obviously, is enriching for them. What are the concerns, social, psychological concerns, psychosocial concerns as we sometimes call them, concerning predicament of post-war Bosnia-Herzegovina and other societies that have lived through conflict? A lack of trust, a lack of self-confidence, a lack of motivation, depersonalization, anger, we see that our system for hearing sound is the most developed in our brain and body, and that it remains, as it were, our hotline to intimacy, to our consciousness, to our appreciation of the moment, and ultimately also to our sensing of other beings.
This is how music should be used. Just you see really like the power of how it changes people's lives, how like significant it can be for some of the kids here.
Music to some people is just, it's just entertainment, it's just music. But until you work with the people and you see how much it can change them and they gain from it. They gain so much more confidence, they can work within people, gives them some sort of structure and discipline and things and other things.
We are wired for sound through our whole bodies and especially through our nervous system. In our brains, we have 10 major cranial nerves that pass by the auditory nerve. There's one nerve in particular that touches the auditory nerve and is the nerve, the major nerve that comes right down through our body and innervates the lungs, the stomach, and those are the organs that are part of what we call the autonomic system. It's automatic. We breathe without thinking. So all of the organs that operate on their own without us thinking, oh, you must do that now. So all of those organs are given instructions by the vagus nerve that comes down, that touches the auditory nerve. And so that is one of the reasons why we feel tension in different parts. Our breathing starts to get tight. We don't breathe with our whole lung. Some things start to shut down, and that's because we have been hearing sounds that tell us that it's not safe or that are very loud. So our whole body is connected to what we interpret the sound to be. And that interpretation goes back to when we were babies and our mother held us and talked to us. So as babies we learned what was safe from the sounds around us. And so when we're very young, we will associate things with certain sounds, and that can create a trauma later on, or it can create a kind of behavior later on.
Looking at the early communication between mothers and infants, how it reflects possibly evolutionary processes in communication in human beings. The the little vocalese dialogues, and finding that these dialogues are intensely musical. They follow very specific tempo, rhythmic structures, and they have narratives in them of an emotional kind. And we suspect that what they're there for is to activate, stimulate and exercise mental processes which is dealing with time, meaning and dealing with relationship. That in these dialogues of sound, mothers and infants are sharing states of mind and body intentionality. And this, in a way, is one of the bases of how music therapy may work. It works well. Music therapy, therefore, is engaging itself in part with this process, using music to share intentionalities, share feelings, understand one another and transform one another.
Much of what we saw was what we call secondary trauma. It was 14 years after the war, so that we weren't really seeing children who had been exposed to the war directly. Many of the children, especially the younger ones, were children who had special needs, what we call special needs, which covered a wide range of behaviors and emotional difficulties that we would have clustered under the term of trauma, because they appeared as though they were PTSD symptoms. But what we were actually seeing was secondary post-trauma stress. And what this means is these children were exposed indirectly to the effects of the war through their parents or through their environment.
Traumatized children have accelerated heart rates. They also have very often breathing difficulties, irregularities, which music and sound seem to be able to help cue and to regulate. There are movement repertoires in traumatized children ranging from very hyperactive to sluggish. And there again, through high energy and low energy musical movement activities, we can harness and entrain these things, offer children release from their own physical movement repertoire, and then down to other levels such as hormonal dysregulation, which occurs in trauma. In trauma, the stress hormones go sky high to begin with and then go lower than they should do. There's an attrition occurs of the system of processing stress. We can help with music to stimulate and regulate these systems. Music helps to stimulate the flow of dopamine. Very important for traumatized kids. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter associated with motivation and the potential for joy.